So how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you today?
It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. I don't know if you guys got completely snowed in today, but we just got crushed. I spent
Wait a minute.
most of the day subway.
Where are you located?
Toronto.
Oh, you guys got hammered, huh?
Yeah, there's about 2.5, 3 feet out there overnight. There was nothing when I went to bed, woke up, and it was about, yeah.
Wait a minute. You guys got 2.5 to 3 feet of snow?
Yeah, overnight.
That's a huge, that's a big snowstorm even for Toronto.
Oh, for sure. We don't really get last few years anyways. Back in the 80s and 90s, before they really started messing with the weather, we used to get a lot of snow. But the
Right.
last few years, it's been very little snow. It still gets cold. We have ice storms more than anything. But
Okay, yeah.
this year, it's funny that they stopped calling it global warming, because I think a lot of people would be asking questions looking at this winter.
Well, I mean, look, many people nowadays will subscribe to anything they're told on TV. I mean, think about this. It's, the people who are freaking out and telling everyone to get an untested cocktail of drugs injected into their body were the ones that were raging, my body, give, my choice and all of that stuff. And look, I wasn't running around losing my mind and bombing abortion clinics and screaming at people or anything. I don't agree with it. I think it's awful. I think that there are options that people could adopt. There are tons of people out there that would adopt, unwanted children and raise them in an amazing way. But look, again, I wasn't running around freaking out, losing my mind. But these are the same people who the media tells them those fucking people won't let us touch their body. And it's like, okay, so any narrative now is possible to sell. So given that that's the case, there can be a fucking snowstorm outside and they're going to go, the world's about to burn up. And people are going to go, ah.
Yeah. Reminds me of that meme of Fauci sitting next to a duck saying, "This is a cat." And everybody going, yeah, that's a cat,
Exactly. Yes. It's literally that bad. Many of these people are very educated, very, very educated people. So here's the thing. I'm thinking, all these people that are COVID deniers and will not get this injection. I mean, I don't think they're the worst people on the planet. The people that I have a major problem with, and I think the news should run with this, are those fucking redheads. I mean, we got to get rid of these redheads. I mean, they're using up all the sunscreen. I think that their skin is so white when the sun hits it, it causes a reflective, radiant heat that is actually what's responsible for heating up the surface of the planet. And if we could just get rid of the redheads, we're probably going to be all right. I mean, think about that: population control and save the planet at the same time. Just get rid of the fucking redheads.
Well, I think you're onto something. I mean, like, where's it happening the fastest? The Arctic. And what's up there? Polar bears. And what are they? They're all white. That just reflects the light, right? It's the same thing.
Let's get rid of everything white, right? Me and you included.
Right.
Let's just. I mean, I think it is the benevolent thing to do that all white people just off each other. Let's just off each other and save the planet, and we'll be good. We'll be good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what the news is telling us. It seems like the truth, right?
Hey, man. I mean, think about it. You see it all the time. White people fucking hate themselves. These lunatics have been convinced by the media and education that because you were simply born a Caucasian, you don't have a whole lot of melatonin in your skin, that you are the devil incarnate and you should be ashamed of yourself. And it was like, don't try putting that shit on my kids. I'll punch you dead in your face for that one.
Yeah. It's almost like our world's a seesaw. And we realized that like the kid on one side of it was like way heavier than the kid on the other one. So we swapped out that kid, but then we put on a kid who was way too light. So now it's like this. And we need to figure out like two kids that will balance this thing so they can actually, we can all kind of coexist.
Well, we just got to go out and find two of the kids that have been being fed ding dongs and donuts their whole life, and they'll balance everything out and break that fucker in half.
Yeah, there you go. Forget fighting the system. We'll just fuck the system. Let's just break it. Start all over again.
Right.
Seems like the way to go. So we've spoken before on a different type of podcast, but this one, I kind of, the world's kind of going over to this transhuman AI. Everything's very mechanical, digital. So I'm trying to remind people of like, the world as it is and was before all of this, and human beings as we are. And so kind of getting people to, tell their story. So even though this is kind of you repeating yourself to me, it's not maybe not so familiar with everyone else. So if you could give us your kind of superhuman origin story of what brings you to today.
What do you want me to break down? What stuff you want me to talk about overall?
Well, you were born, you grew up, but the whole thing. We're in therapy. I'm kidding. But where I became familiar with you anyways was obviously the UFC. So right. I'm kind of curious of the story prior to all of that, because I know there was a lot to that. It wasn't like today the UFC is a big business. Everyone's kind of very familiar with it. Back when you first met it, it was not, right? So it wasn't like a clear path to get there. So
right. Well, it was. Yeah, I was born in Bentonville, Iowa, born and raised, grew up wrestling. I mean, that's what kids do. All the bad wrestlers go out for basketball here, and I was good enough to be able to stay out for wrestling and played football, of course, and had 3 older brothers, older sister. I was much younger, and really spent a lot of my childhood with my dogs. I mean, I was in the woods all the time. I loved fishing. I'd go fishing by myself. I'd go build forts. I'd dig giant underground forts in the forest and stuff, and just that's the way I loved. That was my escape. But of course, sports was certainly good direction for me. And for me, as it worked out, all my brothers were, a couple of them were 6'4", 6'5", the other one was 6'3". I figured I was going to be really big. I was going to be playing linebacker for the University of Iowa. 100% certain I was at least going to do that, if not play in the NFL. I was pretty certain of that. I was very intense when it came to football. I loved football. And, I quit growing. And I think a lot of that had to do with cutting weight as a kid for wrestling, because I also didn't only just wrestle during the winter, during wrestling season, but I also wrestled freestyle and stuff like that during the summer. So I was cutting weight 3/4 of the year. So I think ultimately I started cutting weight in 6th grade and cut weight all through high school and stuff. So I think it probably stunted my growth to a certain extent. You know what I mean? So, but, things worked out. I ended up getting into mixed martial arts through kickboxing. Just my love to compete, because I had to leave college early, take care of my mom when she had heart problems. And my brothers and my sister all had families, had kids to take care of, stuff like that. So I ended up going back home, started working, pouring concrete during the day, bartending and bouncing at night, just trying to pay bills, basically. And then it was totally, you never say by accident, but by fate. A guy that I worked with, who was a superior on the concrete crew, was from Kentucky, and he was a black belt in karate, and he told me that a black belt in karate could kick the crap out of a wrestler. And I said, no, that's not the case, trust me. And he goes, well, we can go right up, we can go out there, go out here in the field at lunchtime, we can find out. We go out there. And I said, all right, we can do that. So we went out there, and I threw him around a little bit and stuff. I didn't hurt him or anything, but he gave me a free pass, 5-day pass to the kickboxing gym in town and karate gym. So I went there, wasted, I thought, 4 days of my life learning how to do, low blocks and punches and, rising blocks and everything. And it was Shorei-ryu was the karate that was being taught there, Okinawan style. And I thought, all right, I'm going to follow through because I don't quit that stuff. I'm going to go this Friday, last day of my free week, and finish this up and then walk the hell out of there. This is a joke. And then I got done with my free lesson and I was done. I'll never walk in this place again. And the guy that owned the place, the instructor, said, hey, if you want, come in and sit and watch the black belt sparring class. We do that every Friday night. So I went in and I watched it, and these boys were banging. They were getting after it. And I said, okay, this is my speed. All right, I'm going to sign up. So I signed up for a black belt course right there, and then the rest is history.
Very nice. And so how would you even find your way to something like UFC at that point in time? Would you be fighting in like other organizations and then they eventually invite you, or how did that work?
Well, yeah, the UFC started in 93. I believe I started fighting in, 95. I'd already won a US K1 rules kickboxing championship and had been training at the boxing gym, Penn Youth Boxing Gym, Davenport Boxing Club, which had probably the best amateur boxing team in the nation, which produced Michael second to none, Michael Nunn, who was the best pound for pound boxer on the planet for 4 years. He was on his star was shooting up, kind of at the twilight of Sugar Ray and Roberto Duran and all those guys. None of those guys would fight him. None of them wanted any part of him because at that time he would have beat all of them. There's no doubt in my mind. But they had an incredible boxing team, and so by the time the UFC rolled around, I had become pretty well versed in boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai and all of that. And then the Battle of the Masters, the first Battle of the Masters, I got a phone call. I was lifting weights in the gym that I was running at the time. And a friend of mine, Joe Goitia from Chicago, who has a martial arts school there still, said, hey, and he had refereed some of my kickboxing matches in Chicago, so he knew of me. And he goes, there's one more spot in this tournament called the Battle of the Masters in Chicago up here. It's $5,000 winner take all. It's no weight divisions, no rules, no time limits. And I think I can get you in it. And I said to myself, yeah, I need that 5,000 more than any of those guys. I already know that, so trying to pay my mom's hospital bills, stuff like that, debt. And so he got me in it. And I went up there and fought 3 fights in one night and ended up winning the tournament. And that's kind of how the road started.
Very nice. I'm always fascinated with fighter psychology. I think because of the way that MMA has evolved over time, we have it's very highly touted as an important part of fighting. But I can remember back in the early days, it was never ever talked about, right? Like it was kind of something that, you didn't hear. First of all, there wasn't a lot of MMA media back in the day, right? So you didn't have a lot of interviews with fighters like yourself at the time and even for years following. But you didn't really hear fighters talking about, the psychology of fighting and what was kind of behind them. I think that in the earlier days, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, and this is maybe more of a question actually, in the earlier days, it was almost motivated by maybe not money, but life circumstances and things like that more than today. It is kind of a job for these guys, right?
Well, I think, more than anything else, it was a passion. We did it because we were passionate and we believed in the, that lifestyle, that warrior lifestyle, that mentality, and there, now there's, millions upon millions of dollars being made, kids look at a guy like Conor McGregor or some of these other guys who are getting huge paydays and thinking, I'm strictly going to do this for the money, where, obviously it paid the bills while I was fighting. But, ultimately we did it because we believed in the sport. We believed that we were the pioneers and that we could truly turn it into a legitimate sport. And that was really what drove us the most. I was doing debates with politicians, televised debates with politicians periodically during that time, because I was scheduled to fight in a state where a politician had sponsored a bill to ban the sport or whatever. And so I would get on TV, and I, of course, have always enjoyed debate. So I would do my homework on statistics and facts about other sports and their safety records, because that's why it was being, proposed that, politicians were saying that they needed to ban it, was for the safety reasons. It was, just horrible what was happening potentially to people. And I'd get on there and I'd debate them, and I'd say 7 kids die a year in Little League Baseball from being hit with line drives. So if you cared about the safety of a sport, which, at the time MMA had 0 deaths, I said, Little League Baseball would have been banned a long time ago. Boxing, which has over 40 deaths a year worldwide, would not exist. Auto racing, in which spectators die, certainly would not be taking place if you gave a hoot about people's, well-being and health. So let's cut through the chase here. And I'd say, this is about you and your state not sanctioning it and not getting a cut of the money. So let's get right down to, brass tacks. And they'd always go, I do have to agree with Mr. Miletich. It is about the money, and it is, so it's all, it is what it is. Everything is these people who want control and power. It's always driven by the money, and it's always driven by narcissistic, sociopathic, egos. That's always the way it is.
And that didn't, that only kind of ended recently. I guess New York finally allowed MMA just a few years ago. That was going on for forever, and it was all just politics, behind the scenes nonsense. None of it had to do with health and safety, which is kind of ironic considering everything else going on in the world. But
we've got to consider that, they went from caring about people getting hurt in mixed martial arts to eugenics. That's a big jump, isn't it?
Just a little bit, yeah. What inspired you to start your own gym, like start coaching and whatnot? I know you, I know, but people listening might not know that I think it was the first time I personally remember hearing of like a fighting system in such a way that it seemed like, a gym that kind of had the whole comprehensive look at MMA and started turning out champions because of that. What kind of inspired that change for you?
Well, I trained a certain way. I modeled my training after the mentality of Iowa wrestling, inspired by Dan Gable as well. I read every Dan Gable book there was to read. I watched every documentary. He and one other guy were really my only 2 sports, I guess what you could call childhood idols, so to speak. Everybody else that has inspired me in my life have been, the Ayn Rands and Thomas Sowells and people like that speak about freedom and things on a much bigger plane. But, Dan Gable was a guy that, his work ethic was unparalleled, and that's the way I wanted things to go and operate. And I knew that was never going to happen unless I ran my own place. So I rented a racquetball court, put wrestling mats on the floor and the walls, and started with just, a core group of guys that followed me over there. And I eventually had probably 250 students in a racquetball court, was training, teaching 6 classes a day and mopping the mats and making all the phone calls, doing all the sales, doing, everything. So my office was a corner. The phone hung on the wall above the wrestling mat on the wall, and it had a long cord on it. So I could go out and collect lead boxes where people would sign up for a free week of classes. And every Friday I would call all those numbers and tell them that they had won, and they could come in Monday for their beginner classes to start. That was it. But, it came down to the work ethic, and mixed martial arts practices need to be run, obviously, like a wrestling practice. There needs to be a lot of conditioning. There needs to be a lot of technique. There needs to be intensity. And that's just how I did things.
How does it, this might be an apple, it's probably definitely an apples and oranges comparison, but winning the title yourself and then coaching someone to win it for themselves, how do you compare? Like, I'm sure they're both pretty amazing, but how do you compare them?
Oh, both are very satisfying. I mean, winning the UFC title was very satisfying for me. It was a dream that I had, realized, of course, after an awful lot of years dreaming about it. But, more than just fighting to win a title, when I won the title and saw that physical belt and then signed my first autograph after I got out of the cage, it's a realization of not just the training, the years of wrestling, the kickboxing, the boxing, the jujitsu, the sambo, all the different stuff that I had trained in. But on top of that, you got to add into that, the fight that we had to keep the sport legal, to keep it legitimate. And, people don't understand. People don't understand the toll that takes on a person when you're battling wars on every front possible, right? You're not just getting ready for a fight with a guy that can kick your ass if you make a mistake, but you're dealing with politicians, athletic commissions, all the powers that be, the sports world that considers you the black sheep. They don't even consider you a martial art, let alone a sport. And the only people that recognized us usually, and with any respect, were professional athletes from different sports and the pro wrestling community. They were like, you guys, they'd come into our locker rooms all the time and stuff and go, man, you guys are awesome. We love this sport. This is amazing. And, we can't even get one story in the newspaper at the time.
Yeah. And I can even remember the way that they used to, like I mentioned, they didn't really interview you guys. They kind of cut promos pro wrestling style back in the day too, which didn't really help the image, I don't think. It did take a long time, like even as a fan, to like be able to explain to people, yeah, I enjoy this sport. They're like, oh, so you like watching men just punch each other in the face, or and or the opposite, you like watching half naked men lay all over each other, and so it's been really beautiful to see, it finally evolved into that major sport that I always thought it could be. And obviously people like yourself sacrificed to make it that way. So thank you very much for that. I'll never be able to say that to you enough. But yeah, it's a very beautiful, it must be very, I don't even know the word. You must feel proud, like a sense of pride when you look at the sport today and see someone like Lawler still fighting and just beat Nick Diaz, and see that mark that you have made still on something so big now.
Yeah, it's, I would say that's more than anything. I've never really given it much thought. I just am appreciative of the journey and, the fact that there were, think about all the low times, the times when, man, I don't even know if the sport's going to make it, and the brother of the gym that I was training at before I left, and this is one of the things that made me realize I needed to leave, because the mindset, there was no belief and no passion. The brother of the guy that was the black belt at the gym that I was training at first said, man, just give up on the sport. It's not going to happen. They're going to ban it everywhere. Just open your own kickboxing and karate school and make a living and do your thing. Just basically saying give up. And that's kind of was the sentiment amongst everybody that I talked to. It was like, it's just not going to happen, bro. The powers are coming after you. And so there was a lot of tough times during those years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm glad it's over. It's obviously transitions with anything as it's growing, which the sport still is. There's still hiccups to work out, but it's very nice to see it where it is as a fan.
Right.
I imagine that a lot of those behind the scenes battles that you mentioned. Oh, we lost you there. You still here?
Am I here? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We just lost your camera.
Okay. I'm going to read something to you, and this is I'm going to read something to you. This is a poem, and this poem, when it was written, the author used to recite it during his darkest times, right? So you think about when the sport's not going to be legal, your dreams are falling apart, doing your best to keep the sport legal, doing debate. But this think of it. Hold on one second. So this is by William Ernest Henley. Have you heard Invictus?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll read that for people that are listening. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. So that, it's a really good reminder of those years and of other tough times that I've been through. And for anybody, that like, you're not going to give up. You're going to keep pushing forward no matter what. That's how we do things. Yeah,
I think unfortunately, I feel like we've got generations of men that are losing that fight in a way, and I think it's showing, which I'll segue into what we'll maybe talk about next. But a lot of that behind the scenes corruption and whatnot that you saw, that fighting that you did for the sport, and the pushback against it, all of that must have kind of, in a way, fueled what you're doing now with Conspiracy Farm.
Yeah, well, Jeff and I don't do that show anymore. He has moved back to St. Louis to be with his kids, and I'm switching gears and going to start doing something called selfdefensewarrior.com, and that is basically assisting people, educating people in not what is going on, because if you don't know what's going on, I don't know what to tell you, but more about solutions for the threats, both macro and micro, that mankind face. And everything from the grid going down or government collapse to somebody kicking your front door in, so things that you can control, things that you can't control, but you can insulate yourself from, whether it's, weapons, whether it's techniques, whether it's what you should be putting in your body to stay healthy, communications equipment, growing your own food, water purification systems, power, how to power, whatever it is that you live in, those sorts of things. So it's going to be just across the board, and there'll be a store there. I'm going to be basically doing a lot of reviews of different pieces of equipment, whether anything from guns all the way to a frickin' slingshot to, a sat phone, how to invest in digital currency, how to start your own digital wallet, a lot of these different things.
Very cool. That's a lot, all very needed. Clearly, the world's going in a direction that seems to inevitably lead to us needing all of those things, right? It's not a pretty picture. On this podcast, just to avoid the censorship, I use some code words. The thing going around, I call the joy. You can catch the joy, you can spread the joy. The joy may have been released from a lab, who knows? One solution is a lollipop. And then there's people who are remaining sugar-free. And then we also have like naturally sweet people out there who have, been infected with the joy and recovered. But I think that, as much as that being a thing, like it's a big deal right now. It's where it's all pointing and how it's being used to manipulate us in a certain direction that I think you see just as clearly as I do. And I appreciate the fact that you're speaking up and trying to fight to get other people to see it and stand up for us as well, because, this is a very bad path we're leading towards in terms of giving up our rights and our freedom, all in the name of fear. And yeah.
Well, and look, if I didn't have 3 young daughters, if I didn't have any kids, and, it was just me, I would still be, pushing back. But I mean, for those people out there, we have to ask ourselves, why why would we leave a world like that to our children? What why would I want to do that? And there are factors that go into why people's thinking are the way that they are. So, for many years, large companies have produced products that have been taken for a couple generations now that have caused some cloudiness, some disconnect. A lot of the food has things in it that causes people to not only lose their health and be obese, but when the gut bacteria is destroyed, it gives off toxins and chemicals that cause the brain to not work correctly. That's just part of this as well. And then on top of that, you've got the boopity boops that everybody's been giving their children for many years, which causes issues. And so then you've got that beautiful box on the wall that tells people how to think and what's going on. And a lot of people think that is the gospel, right? And they can't think for themselves. And that's how we ended up here in a nutshell. It's taken several decades to do it, but we could see it developing. Anybody that was paying attention could see and observe a lot more left lane drivers all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, and like I was saying with the teeter-totter before, it's like a lot of these things that they're doing are rooted in good ideas, and things that at the surface level we could probably all agree with. It's the extreme to which it's being driven, and the complete disregard for when their own logic and reasoning doesn't play into their own value system, and or into their own comfort zone, making them feel safe. And I think because of the general fear of the joy and everything that's been, that beautiful box on the wall has been telling people over the last couple of years, that, yeah, it's almost like, I don't know if you're familiar with the tactics of a program called MK Ultra, but I also always joke that it's like MK Ultra has been performed on the masses at this point. There's this trauma-based mind control thing going on between people in the news and people in the media and people in the TV.
Yeah, MK Ultra. I mean, that's been going on, at very least since the 70s. The several thousand books that were released, romanticizing hallucinogenic drugs and whatever else, And look, I'm not against eating mushrooms and natural stuff and things like that. I certainly have when I was younger. Not a lot, but enough that it opened up my third eye and I see what's going on in the world, right? But more along the lines of, I think, like encouraging a lot of it, like eat window pane every day type stuff, you know what I mean? And kind of, to a certain extent, almost crippled a generation, and we had a gentleman on our show who was an Oxford PhD, and his name evades me right now, of course, probably more likely because I got punched in the head for a living, but an incredibly intelligent man who, he was talking about MK Ultra in the 70s and the books that I had read, the teachings of Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda, those were CIA funded books. Agency funded a lot of that sort of stuff and a lot of that information. And I just simply put two and two together and went, it's very obvious that we went from the 70s to, crack in the ghettos and violence and destroying the family unit of, and that was going on for quite a while, destruction of the Black family, because they were very religious. They stuck together like a unit. What better way to destroy them? Just constantly make crack, put crack in the ghettos and throw guns around and destroy them and hand out welfare, which set out to destroy the Black family, but is now infested, of course, all of America. Work ethic barely exists anymore anywhere in the United States, and I don't know how bad it is in Canada right now, but it's gone by the wayside. So it's all very obvious. It's a very complex plan, where MK Ultra is just part of the whole deal, right? But we have been conditioned to think with our emotions. People don't use their gray matter. They think with their lizard brain, with their emotions, with their survival. They're conditioned with fear, and they think with fear, and they react with fear, and they think that they are doing something benevolent by demanding that everyone get an injection, because they're doing something out of love, of course, for their family, for their community, and for their country. So they are convinced that they are doing the right thing, and meanwhile don't understand and realize that they have become little robotic authoritarians. They're duplicates, carbon copies of the people that have handed down these orders.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because it's causing, people to turn against each other in ways that they wouldn't, like we just went through Christmas, and I was hearing it from all sorts of people, like the fighting over the joy and did you get your test? Do you have your lollipop? All of this stuff. And of course, we had the wave pass through in the middle of all of that, which really kind of fucked up a lot of people's Christmases, I think. But I think that's kind of the biggest problem, is that it's causing us to kind of turn on each other. We're kind of infighting, and instead of seeing where the actual cause of all these problems is coming from, they've kind of perverted our own morality so strongly that we're fighting each other instead of fighting them. It's pretty clever.
Well, it's been done numerous times. Just now they have the technology to spread it faster and spread panic and fear faster and everything else. So, that's the thing is, people don't understand that, these laboratories exist for a reason. I have even confronted research scientists who speak on behalf of the health departments and everything else, and they can't answer my questions correctly. We've confronted them in front of large crowds when they're giving presentations, and I've seen doctors physically attacking, myself and my friends who are filming, the collapse of their narrative, and they panic and they want to actually physically attack you because they cannot combat what you're saying with any kind of, because their doctors have never had their narrative, they've never been confronted, and they don't know what to do when they're confronted with facts, and they panic. So that's what we're dealing with, and we're people that are not going to back down. Here in Iowa, we recognized early on, and we got on our politicians, we got on our school boards, and we shut that stuff down. We're not going to put up with it. We're just simply not going to. That's why you don't see anything for 2 years on my face anywhere. It's just not going to happen. So it comes down to the people. Look, power really only exists when it's given. If it's not given, okay, you really don't have power over me unless I give it to you. And I'm not giving up this power. I'm just not doing it. So I just want people to understand, and I'm trying to ride so you don't get the shadow ban or anything like that. But, I made an Instagram video the other day where I just said, I don't know what you're thinking, where the line of thinking has come from, where anyone, any person on this planet, whether they're a Supreme Court, school board member, a doctor, the president of a nation, thinks that they have the authority to order my body violated with anything, to have anything put in my body, that I say no, because that is the last frontier of human rights and freedom. That is absolutely the skin, wrapping up this meat suit. That is the barrier. That is the last frontier that we must defend, or all is lost, really. There's just nothing left after that. And I said, no man sits above me on a throne on this planet. There's not a single man that sits above me. And there's not a single woman or man that sits above anyone. on this planet. And you've got to recognize that and simply say, no, it's not happening. And other people need to recognize the insanity of that line of thinking.
Absolutely. And I think that, I'm really hoping that it's not too late. It's been 2 years now. And I mean, for various reasons, I've been screaming this for rooftops for probably 10 years, but over the last 2 years, it's been way too obvious. And it's just funny, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, where it was like at the beginning of it when we were warning, this might be the outcome of it. We were called crazy. No, bro, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. They would never do that. That would never happen. And now it has all happened. And I think that there's, just more of that to come now, instead of, just warning about what we were warning about in the first place. We are warning about more things, and all of those things are coming to pass. And it seems really hard to get anyone to see it if they won't shut off the TV, and they won't, be humble about the fact that at least this far into it, they've kind of bought into a lie.
Right. Well, most don't have a historical reference on, say, for instance, the banking industry, the history of banking, right? They don't understand technically 3 central banks that have existed in the United States. The creation of the Federal Reserve. They don't understand global banking. They don't understand who's in control of all of that. Basically, is in control of everything. The only people more powerful than big tech and big pharma CEOs are the bankers, the ones that control the monetary system, right? So without any historical knowledge of any of that stuff, just people just are void of how wars happen, why wars happen, who starts wars, who funds wars. What number of Canadians and Americans even know that people like Walt Disney and Henry Ford funded frickin' Hitler? They don't know the names of the companies that made huge business in Germany and with Germany during World War II. Gosh, BMW, what amazing vehicles. I love BMW cars. But yeah, they did a lot of business with Hitler, right? BASF, I can go down the line of a ton of corporations that exist today. The AP, the Associated Press, was who controlled the narrative in Nazi Germany. Well, they control the narrative now worldwide, right? It is all very. I would just ask people, in searching for one strand of common sense in their brains, is emergencies don't last 2 years, but wars do. And the war being waged on us isn't being waged on us by China. It's being waged on us by that 0.0001% of people and families and bloodlines that have been in control of this planet for eons. And they're just doing it to us again.
Well, I know firsthand that that's true based on the way that I was brought up. And I think right now it's almost undeniable for people. Like I've been trying to explain to people that, these borders that we see between these countries, they don't really truly exist in the way that we think that they do. And a lot of people haven't wanted to accept that. But right now with this global rollout of the joy, I think it's almost too obvious for a lot of people to deny finally.
Well, consciousness is rising right now, and that's where the rub is, right? People are waking up. A lot of people are waking up, and that's why the rub is happening. That's why this, the division is happening, and it's being driven, of course, by the media. But I think many people who early on believed all of this stuff have reluctantly fully awakened to the realization that nothing's good about what's going on, and it's very deliberate. This is not an accident, and that they've been doing this to us for a long time. I mean, their technology and understanding and gain of function research has been around for at least 50 years, if not longer. So animal pathogens haven't just magically continued to jump over into humans. It's just not magic. It takes some work.
Absolutely. So where do you think it all leads? What do you think the end goal is, so to speak, for them?
Well, I mean, we need not go further than the Georgia Guidestones for their goals, right? And the fourth industrial revolution, as you talked about, complete surveillance, total control, and it's with enough assistance from the people around us, they might just pull it off, brother.
Unfortunately, and I mean, like, I'm not going to quit fighting, even if it's one of those fights that I'll fight whether I win it or lose it. You know what I mean? I can't submit to any of this. Even the idea of using like a fake vax pass makes me sick to my stomach, let alone actually, submitting to that form of control. And I do think that it all leads us into a new version of humanity. Like, like we've heard the Ray Kurzweils of the world talking for years about human 2.0 and their plan for that. And I think that all of that kind of ties into where we're going. What we call a transhuman world. We see the metaverse making its ugly appearance. Obviously, the world in terms of banking is changing, both for the good and for the bad, and I just think technology is going to be something that kind of swallows us whole really quickly. And a lot of these restrictions, a lot of these, the lockdowns and everything, it's almost like they're training our behavior to fit into a new type of world.
Yeah, well, tough to teach an old dog new tricks, brother.
And I'm happy for that, truly. One thing I wanted to ask you about before I let you go, I've seen quite a few people actually sharing about black oxygen a few months ago. Recently, I've heard some like very negative points of view on that. My first thought is that it's probably really fucking healthy, and that's why all of a sudden there's all these very negative points of view on it. But I know that you were one of the people who had some experience with it, so I was wondering if you could help me out with that.
Well, I mean, I can explain. Fulvic humic acid at the purest forms are everything that our bodies are supposed to have at an organic level. So Senate Document 264, which is from 1936, is when doctors and scientists testified in front of a Senate subcommittee 84 years ago, whatever, basically saying that the explosion of disease and sickness in America was due to the lack of nutrients in the soil because of mass production of food. Obviously, we're 84 years later, and we have cancer that is rampant, autoimmune diseases and everything else, because we simply don't have the nutrients we need to keep ourselves healthy. So if you put the true organic forms of nutrients into your body that you need at high levels and correct levels, your body is allowed the ability to basically reverse the symptoms of a lot of things. Let's put it that way. And there are other compounds on the planet that can do the same. There are natural ways to get rid of the symptoms of diseases across the board that I have seen, I've witnessed with my own eyes. But basically, it would add 45% more oxygen at a cellular level. It was nanotechnology created by God. It was refined swamp mud from 50 feet below the surface. And it could go in and out of the cells. The nanotechnology, like I said, add 45% more oxygen, deliver nutrients to the mitochondria, which are to the cell, and thereby activate natural energy, resetting the gut bacteria, resetting the hormonal system, removing inflammation from the body, including the arteries, respiratory system, and just doing amazing things. Some people who are basically a cult, I think, made a lot of calls to the FDA and Health Canada, and then those organizations started to stop shipments and test the product. And then because people started requesting, because of the bad media stuff that was started over a 1% threshold was reached in people wanting the return of the product, which then gets your marketplace shut down by the people that run it. So, it was very unfortunate, but it was systematic, and it was, very sad, because, I know a lot of people that have been reaching out to me, begging me for what they need to do for their health, because their health is now going backwards again. So, this is some really serious stuff. And so people need to be aware that there are natural substances on this planet that were put here for a reason, that have healed mankind for thousands of years. Medicine used to be the understanding of plants and roots and mushrooms and everything else. And people now are trained to think that that is somehow, quackery, when modern medicine has been around since the early 1900s, technically, started by Rockefeller, who had created pharmaceutical products, pills, bonded together with petroleum, of all things, right? And people think that that's health. So modern healthcare has nothing to do with health, and everything to do with profit. So I think a lot of people are awake, though. We've seen that. We've seen a huge number of people suddenly realize that Western medicine and modern medicine is not to be trusted in many ways, and that people are seeking out natural remedies for their sicknesses.
And really kind of looking at their consumption finally, which is good. I think even though the news media may not have, banged the drum loudly enough, I think a lot of the podcast media, people like Joe Rogan, people like yourself, have, kind of pushed the envelope on, we need to get ourselves healthy again. We need to start taking back responsibility for the things that we're consuming, the way that we're looking after each other, and the way that we're interacting with our world. Yeah,
100%. Get healthy. Be, when Tim Kennedy talks about being hard to kill, not being obese is one of them.
Right. It's the Zombieland movie as well. It was like one of the first things that would kill you, right? They got all the heavy people first. So before I let you go, I would, if you could, just, for people watching, what's your advice for how to, maintain their sanity while we all go through this?
Throw your TVs and your radios out the window. Pray a lot. Read a lot of books. Educate yourselves, and become close with those around you. Learn to build bonds with people who are like-minded, and build communities that way. And whatever you got to do, have regular meetings with those people and get-togethers, so that you can all strengthen each other through what we're going through.
Well said. Thank you for that. And, you mentioned heroes. You were one of mine when I was a young man. So thank you very much. It's an honor to get, be able to call you a friend and get to have conversations with you at this stage of life. And thank you very much for, fighting for us, because, history will be written one day. And I believe that you're on the right side of it, my friend.
I think you are too. And glorious beard, by the way, brother.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right. We'll say bye to everybody at home. Cheers.
Peace.